Okay, so I wanted to say a few words here around what I've noticed to do a little integration, like 5 or 10 minutes at the most, and then back over to Volker to figure out what to do next. First off, I just want to just say I'm so glad Volker's here. Give him a round of applause. He's so awesome. His presence is so lovely. He's got pretty impeccable stance, although different from mine. So again, it tells you, this is not a cookie cutter thing. I'm just really enjoying his rapport with himself and what he's bringing to the role, and just really taking charge. It's really sweet. There's two things I wanted to lift up into more of a level of consciousness. Number one, I wanted to say, but I didn't want to interrupt. When you see him facilitating, remember to watch him as a facilitator learner, right? Like what can I steal, or what can I imitate, or what was cool about that, or what do I need to ask about later because I don't know why he did that, kind of thing. So just remember to keep your facilitator hat on, as well as your client hat, or your representing hat, or other kinds of hats you might be wearing. One thing in particular I want to lift up about what I saw him do in the very, very beginning is it was pretty textbook, staying in rapport with his client and helping the client towards their primary emotions. Just really, I just thought that was like, I wanted to just take a picture of that, or like stop everything and say, that thing I've been talking about helping someone come to their primary emotions while staying in rapport as you do it. If you remember the beginning interaction with Christina, that was really sweet. The other thing I just want to notice that I'm really enjoying personally is the very first lecture, I think on the first day, maybe in the first Zoom class, was systemic intelligence and how to more and more just be thinking systemically about things rather than, literal story, or, that whole thing you were saying about structural constellations are dangerous because the roles can be ambiguous, and if people can't hang out with ambiguity, then it can be a rough ride. It was like perfect. It's like Exhibit A.
Some ambiguity about who that person that we added.
Right.
Who's it representing?
Well, that's just constellations.
Now,
sometimes
when I facilitate family constellations and I add a representative,
you name it.
I name it. At least in my head,
Okay.
it's like, this is mom. I'm adding mom.
Okay.
Yeah. It's rare that I'm sort of like, I don't know. I'm adding, I don't know. Like, that does occur, but it's.
Well,
it's relatively rare.
It had a little bit more of a label than I don't know. It's whatever is being projected onto this role. So it's got a label. Yes. You just don't know what the content of that is.
Yes.
Yeah. So just that was a really good example of, instead of trying to figure out how to make the tetralemma, the structural constellation, make some kind of particular literal sense, Volker was really thinking systemically about what he was looking at and trying to help the system along with that. So that was just really kind of awesome role modeling as well in that regard.
And maybe to elaborate, I mean, in this context, to me, systemic means in pattern.
Sure, yeah.
So that the pattern of the polarization of the choice is it's a little bit like the polarization in the relationship with the parents. So so just constantly checking on various levels of abstraction and looking for correlation.
I see more.
But also, for instance, the representative for artistic endeavor showed up in the way that it showed up, and not taking that as literal information, like, oh, now we know what artistic endeavor is really like, right? No, it's got a meaning that is still not fully seen or revealed yet. If we're not thinking systemically, we could turn to our client and say, oh, it turns out your artistic endeavor is your burden. And we'd
get rid of it.
we would be inaccurate. in doing that, right?
No,
That's what we're talking about. Systemic thinking is noticing, yes, the patterns, the layers, and how can the meaning be absolutely 100% true, but not necessarily literal, right? As I've quoted to you before, Carl Jung, don't literalize the images. Yeah. So that was just a really nice example of taking the information 100% seriously, but not literally, and asking other questions about it. And there's 10 other directions it could have gone in, but parents are usually good first guess, generally speaking, you know? I mean, it could be other things, yeah. Is that clear, the distinction I'm making a little bit around?
Yeah, and I think you see that more in these kinds of structural constellations than you do in, say, like if mom was saying particular things, you wouldn't necessarily assume the role of mom is feeling that, because mom is there, you've got content.
Right.
Thinking systemically, but we've got sort of the functions in the system, or as I would call them, or the particular roles, like that makes sense to me. That those would show up more like that. We're looking at how they're functioning in the system is not necessarily the literal context.
Right. Having said that, it can happen with people as well. The example I've given you guys several times is mom and dad who fought their whole lives.
Right.
They were at each other's throats. That's what the client's story is. And you put in mom and dad, and the first thing they do is fall into each other's arms and say, I love this person. And the client's going, that's not what it was like. And you're like, that's right. It's not what it was like at the literal level. And how do we, instead of saying, well, either that's wrong, that's what's.
Yes, and.
Yes, and is, I've done this in a management team, and the two VPs that were constantly at each other, they trusted each other through thick and thin.
Right.
They knew exactly where they stood with each other.
Yeah.
They had no withholds. Not to the outside. That always seemed like the constant battle in the room, and everybody's sort of constant eye roll. But they had no issue with it at all.
Right. And the client getting the reframe on, oh, my parents loved each other, and for whatever reason, the only way they knew how to show that was in this constant fight, reframes everything about how they relate to that conflict, and things can change. So again, I invite you to always take the information 100% seriously, but not necessarily literally, when you're looking for the deeper layers, okay? And then I'm just gonna remind you at some point, maybe not now, to mention over lunch we talked about available versus fixed attention, but that might not be now, but I just want to remind you. And I think that's all I wanted to share in terms of things I noticed. So I think I'm going to go back into the circle. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. As I stumble and work with all my logistics here.
Oh, for the constellation.
Or not, or whatever.
So, let's just think about it. We could do sort of a more prototypical archetypal of a visual constellation, just so that it's in the space and you can see it. I also know that one of the stated goals of this class is that you all get to experience facilitating. So I definitely want to have space for that.
I'm fine if you don't. So.
And
So good.
now is someone willing to co-facilitate with me? How does that sound? So when I say co-facilitating,
You can We'll do something else. She facilitated family constellation for me last night. So I'm just like, okay, just want like a different perspective.
Well, have we already agreed on the client here?
No,
Okay,
not
okay.
necessarily.
Okay.
I'm totally in the exploration negotiation mode.
How does it work with co-facilitation? Because I always like wonder who's in charge then. That's why I want more. That's one of the things I wanted for this weekend to practice more, but I'm not sure with co-facilitation seems.
Plus, it's really tricky when there's a really
Yeah, like you
big
already.
credibility gap.
Yeah, like you're
As a
already.
learner, you have a different whether you have skills or not. I can't tell.
Yeah.
But I have some sense for the credibility that's in this case.
You have more
And
weight.
there's a big gap.
Okay.
So that makes it interesting as a way of co-leading or co-facilitating.
Okay.
So we're definitely open there, sort of multiple layers of learning there at the same time.
Maybe we should work on like just our group.
But then I'm leading.
Yes. Oh,
then I'm facilitating.
Totally.
I would be interested in that constellation
Yeah, that would be
of our group.
useful, right?
The systemic constellation.
What would it? I don't understand what that would even mean, except that we would have representatives for each one of us, and what I don't even know what that would mean.
Well, maybe it would be more symbolic than just having each play each other.
Like, yeah, this is so how we are. Yeah, that's it right here.
Herding the kitties.
Sorry?
Folker can handle it.
Look at you smiling and relaxing over here.
Can you fix that? Can you fix this?
Okay. So, yes, we're going to be responsive. Yes, awesome. So, right here, we're entering sort of the scenario where, like, how do you work with an intact team?
Intact team.
Mm-hmm. So, say, you and the people reporting to you, and I'm coming in and we're doing a constellation. What is possible? Like, representing individuals, not so possible. The level of transparency and disclosure that happens in constellation at work, not so much. It's the rare team that's willing to tolerate.
I get it. So all of the people in the system are present.
Yeah.
Got it. Intact. Got it. I was trying to.
Yes.
Got it.
Now, the kinds of constellations you do are really different. So, for example, if there's a conflict, there's a faction in favor of more vacation time and a faction in favor of more snacks. And they're having a problem. Or something. Whatever stupid example.
Can't we offer all?
Sorry?
Just
What
side
about
comment.
both?
Yeah. I like snacks on vacation.
You're the people trying to do the mediating and the peace making. It's awesome.
So now nobody's particularly and everybody can watch it. Or the part of the team that's confident about the project, and the part of the team that thinks the project is doomed. And you have the project and two representatives for those factions in the team. And everybody sort of knows I belong here or there, but maybe not, and I can fudge it. And then everything's going to just come out right out. So high symbolic level, abstracted away from it.
Yeah.
Could be useful.
That's the way you need to work with intact systems.
Got it.
I do that very little because the options are limited.
Yeah.
So generally I work with a manager who says, my team or my group or my business unit, blah, blah.
So you're doing a constellation with the manager there as the client, and then other representatives who are presumably not part of the organization.
Representing his
His
peers
organization.
and
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
so that the focus, the client, and the disclosure that occurs is not undermining authority or weakness or suddenly the
Makes sense.
exposed.
That's where you source the representatives or something like that. Do you have paid representatives, or do you have like a team, or do you invite people in to come and help with that?
I haven't paid anybody yet for representing, but that is an option. Yeah. No, it's building a community or building a group of colleagues who are interested, and some of them want to learn more and want to come more and more and more,
Sure, yeah.
and others just come in, have a constellation done, and go on, and then help you with this.
Just wasn't sure how much of that was similar to family constellation group.
At least that's all I know, and so
So what do
Can we
you
get interns?
for representatives, like not having the team come in? So Volker, this is one of the moments that you asked of me.
You're going off the rails.
to interrupt when we get too far into the weeds and just call it project.
That's what we do. Let's
I started the day there, making the difference between so for all of us, some mindfulness around how far we go up and how much that is at the expense. So, considering that control seems to be part of the conversation study group. So in family constellations, we end up with this idea of precedence, particularly in a couple. Yeah, father, mother, clockwise. The same is true in organizational constellations. So when you think about, you will see that when we do a proper constellation, that seniority in the sense of order, meaning precedence in the sense of order, is represented clockwise in a circle. Or maybe largely from left to right, if you put it on a line. So here's an exercise for all of you. Stand in a line with the person that has the most value to contribute to the group in terms of their leadership, expertise, how they're contributing. In other words, alpha being on the left side, and then standing shoulder to shoulder next to each other in what feels right and appropriate without thinking about it. Feeling, just like we often do in constellations, like, do you feel better on this side or on that side? I don't know, in family constellations, we don't do that very much. In organizational constellations, we do it all the time because the general rule of age isn't so useful. So is it CEO, COO, CFO? No, the CFO is more important. And so a lot of these, essentially, they consider themselves peers, still have order of precedence. And that creates a lot of politics in leadership teams.
Left to right from the facilitator's viewpoint or the participant's
So
viewpoint?
alpha and junior, and looking that way, looking towards me.
All right.
And trust your feeling, even if you don't like what you're doing.
You're not in it?
I'm not in
No.
study groups.
No,
Okay.
not study group.
Alpha by the door.
Now,
Also
wait a
by
minute.
the door?
Let me ask one clarifying question. Is it how much we have available to contribute, or how much we are actually going to contribute?
How it feels. It's not
How it
rational.
feels.
It's not, you're trying to
Ah.
figure it out.
So current state, today, as of the present moment, who's alpha? I want to know.
Let's say Peter. He's done it before. He went through this training last year.
I'm the one standing by the door.
And
Okay.
So find your place relative to each other and no more talking.
More alpha this week over here.
If you're not comfortable, then you can move. Just kind of waiting to see how long it goes.
I'm just gonna check it out.
And of course, there is such a leadership failure as not claiming your spot.
Oh, no, it's
Feels better.
Anybody can initiate a request to experiment and switch places and swap around.
Let's try some other spots.
Yeah, let's try it.
I mean, if you don't mind.
No, sorry.
asking if you
That's the alpha thing to do.
I want a different shape. I also feel like it's not linear. It's there's overlap, or there should be.
Sure, but at this point, I think we're kind of just feel it to what's
So let's assume that it's binary at this moment,
Mm.
and that there is a side that feels better than the other. Pretty easy choice.
Yeah, I think I have at least experience. It just doesn't feel right.
What would-
I mean, right now it's just this doesn't feel right.
I'm not messing with that either.
So where is your place in the line? You're standing outside the line. So it's something funny, a funny spot you're claiming for yourself.
It is a funny spot. I guess that's sort of where I.
Okay.
So,
So for other people around you, that's not very comfortable yet, even though it may be for you.
I understand.
So
The hard thing about that is, it's like if that's how it is, it's probably not. I mean, maybe it's just uncomfortable. It's. I didn't necessarily make it that way. I'm trying to represent what is. Oh, no, that's not right.
Oh.
That's so.
sweet.
That's so not right.
Yeah, we'll all just reorient the line. Yeah.
See, look what happened.
She should be further up. Yeah.
Oh, I don't feel comfortable being last.
all right, so this is
about right.
This is about the behavior, the dynamics, where to a certain extent you can claim that spot.
Yeah.
And then when it gets too uncomfortable, you just
Totally.
you
That's
check
what
out.
happened on Friday.
That's what happened. Well, that was more personal. Well, whatever the experience was, yes. I did that even before. Where I helped lead the first two study groups, and then stepped out because it felt too big, and my place in the class felt a little weird personally, and then just kind of everybody else with the opportunity to do it, and I didn't go, but it wasn't because of that. It was because of family stuff. So, but yeah.
So let's maybe articulate a little bit more closely or specifically about leadership, particularly in a self-organizing context. I mean, leadership fundamentally are choices and behaviors and stances fundamentally that make it better, that makes it go well for everybody. And in a self-organizing context, more than in any other, like if we declare leaders, then they have power. They have positional authority, and they're in a certain spot and they use it or they don't, or they're good at it or bad, but they have the power nonetheless. In a self-organizing context, you don't get away with that. You can claim you are bestowed the power as long as you're serving. And as soon as you're not serving anymore, the group starts to just undermine you and just it goes away. The power goes away. So power is bestowed conditionally as long as that person is acting in service of the group. And that has nothing to do with constellation expertise or age. Yeah, so senior in terms of seniority. It's the group decides from moment to moment to moment where power gets bestowed.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the truth of this line is sort of constantly moving.
So oftentimes a harmonizer, yeah, someone who's skilled at running interference and getting people back on track and quelching fires and intervening, becomes the unofficial leader, and everybody's just starting to pay attention to one person, whether they're particularly good or experienced. Not so important. It's making it go well that is the defining characteristic.
I'm happy over here. It's low commitment, and with my life right now, that feels perfect. I'm happy to show up and go along. That actually feels exactly appropriate for where I'm at right now. I don't have the capacity to lead a group right now. I'm just happy to follow.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Are you feeling solid?
Yeah.
On your 2 feet?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier you're not so good there at the very end.
Well, if I see how I'm standing fine. I don't like the implications of status, or that bothers me because I do feel like I'm very capable in this world.
Yes.
So
if we take the status idea out,
yes.
and we put in the primary parameter or determinant in terms of my commitment to make it go well.
Oh.
So as a facilitator here today, I mean, I haven't measured myself up with Leslie in a long time. So, I don't really know where I stand, but I know where I stand as a leader. I'm in front of the room, and my commitment is to make it go well for the group. And as long as I'm committed to that, we're having a pretty good experience. When I start to get confused about it or insecure or something, then it starts to immediately reflect in the group. And how good a facilitator I am or not, I don't know. So apparently at the moment, you have the highest commitment to make it go well. And that's kind of naturally where your attention goes. Make it go well for the group.
I feel like I didn't want to stand here. I feel comfortable, but only when others pushed me to be here.
Very nice. We're mammals. We're pack animals. We do have informal leaders at any point in time, whether we acknowledge it or not. It's better to make it explicit and to actually know what's going on, than to muddle around. And you might want to experiment with finding a different place if that feels. I mean, Peter seems pretty comfortable with I'm not leading the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like standing next to Peter.
So that has nothing to do whether you're good or bad or experienced or old or it's where your attention goes.
So I've heard of like the service paradigm for leadership, right? And so that's what. So then it becomes like who is holding the deepest or the deeper commitment to service to the group?
Yes.
Yeah. So interesting. Which,
Combined with skill, I would assume, not just a commitment, but some ability to do it.
Oh yeah, no, it has to be noticeable. The group has to actually register. If they're just well intentioned, but like fumbling all over the place, that's not leadership.
current executive leadership of the nation notwithstanding.
Oh
Let's
no,
not do
we're not
that. Don't switch it.
Yes. Fundamentally, in the self-organizing context, that's relatively fluid, and there may be 1 or 2 or 3 people who switch it and who fill in for each other, and sometimes you have a bad day and a good day, and the group sort of just readjusts. And just having it explicit, now everybody can sort of chill out. It's like sometimes when I'm in big meetings with a big conference table, and it gets contentious and we get bogged down, I just have everybody get up and then take a seat in order of employment date. Just sorting by length of service. Around the table, just like, top of the table and then service date. And then we continue with the conversation. And suddenly we're like, everything opens up and people are negotiating and the log jam is over.
Wow. Fascinating.
And in an organizational context, I pick employment date because it's the most objective. I'm not like who's the best coder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's neutral.
Neutral.
So I ignore the rest of the order and just start there. And then suddenly everybody sort of gets along and someone holds the end of the table. They've been there the longest.
Yeah, that's clean. I had some anxiety about us organizing based on like.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This is like high explosive stuff.
Well, not anymore. But the initial request was like, oh shit, here we go.
I've done this with those consulting groups. Mostly. And initially there was complete revolt.
Yep. I can imagine.
They were just not playing along. And I just reflected it back to them. You're not willing to own that there is a natural order. And you have this pretend game going on, and a lot of the politics that you're having with each other is around the pretending. And then they sort of like, they went through the initial heat run, and they're like, okay, what feels better? What feels better? Oh, really? And then everything sort of settled. Yeah, and there was sort of an acknowledgement of like, oh, yeah, no, I don't know. I'm way too, like, this doesn't mean anything about how good I am or, how much status I bring to the, like, no. And in the self-organizing context, it's a place we learn. Like, the power is bestowed.
You look smaller right now to me than you do, though. Yeah.
I'm not entirely happy in this spot.
No, it doesn't look right.
It's just
So
temporary,
the 5 minute block is better.
but it could temporarily.
I am also a communal community-minded person. So,
So you want to pretend?
no, it's like it's hard to give myself permission.
Yes. You have spoken.
Well, it's not internal, but
I know.
and so what we're going on is willingness to serve the group, something like that.
Yes.
Just how it feels in your body.
Sorry.
For starters, just follow your body. And it's very binary.
Mhm.
You're to the left of Peter,
Mhm.
and you're to the right of Peter. Which feels better?
We'll check it out.
This or
See, there.
no. I'm
You
talking
want
this or that. Which one's better?
It's wrong with me. And it's just
No, the next one.
I don't get it.
Just the next one. Next one.
I think I'm noticing her feelings about it.
Yeah, very worse. Which one's better for you? That's better for you.
Yes.
How are you with that?
That's good. I
Okay.
actually feel happy that she claimed her spot.
There is something about claiming leadership. Yeah, if leadership stays unclaimed, yeah, the muddling just continues on. That's a failure. Then you're in failure mode.
It both has to be claimed and given.
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can give it to somebody who doesn't claim it and then it drops on the floor. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't feel so good on my handlebars.
Same thing. Same thing. So that's part of the claiming.
Yeah.
I really think we're going to do this line because it didn't.
It's part of the claiming.
I know.
It needs to be resolved. In the
Interesting.
context of this group,
In
this
this group
moment,
and this
in
one,
this-
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission to not take on burden when you're not ready. Okay, how are we doing? Better? Clearer?
Okay, boss.
Don't.
That won't work. But it's good to breathe into that. There's something that you bring to this group that puts you in that spot. And it may not be obvious. But the group doesn't make a mistake here. But just think about a wild gang of gorillas in the jungle. Are they ever confused about who's alpha? Only when the top alpha fight for a little bit, and then it's clear again.
I really don't like that analogy.
Oh, I just wasn't Rwanda. Oh, they're
Really?
absolutely spectacular creatures. They're spectacular, and they're just like humans. It's really fascinating. It's awesome. And it's like the silverback.
Volker, can I ask a question in this context then? So we have, for now, a sense of the alpha, but occasionally, but really all the time, and an individual, any of them will be pulled out to function like you are right now. I mean,
Yes.
I'm the alpha, but you're functioning as the alpha in this group this weekend, temporarily.
Yes.
So can you say a little bit more to all of us about how to
Yes.
deal with that a little bit more, shifting leadership in the
a
group?
in a high-functioning, self-organizing context, this idea of sensing and responding actually implies or ends up in leadership moving around and being quite situational. So we're providing feedback, and suddenly the experience brought into the space around what worked or what didn't or what happened in the constellation or not, yeah, puts people with the experience in the circle up front and center. Or so context, then so the more fluid or the more cognizant group is of who's in the best position to lead us through this bit. And we're willing to be all flexible about that. Allows us to optimize in the moment. And so this is sort of a vague, generic thing, where at the moment this is kind of where you're landing, and then in the context of the study group, it'll switch and shift, and who has to contribute, but yeah, that's probably as much as I can say about that.
It's just helpful to name that, acknowledged or not, there is this unconscious sorting that's happening that is also inherently sort of tied to how we are serving. And just having an awareness of that, I suspect, we'll see, I'll be curious to see what happens with regard to the group dynamics. Just kind of with the awareness of this frame that you've introduced.
Yep.
Just then some of the we just like, then it just becomes like, oh, okay, look at that. Oh, look how this is flowing or whatever.
So here's an offer I can make, that I will track leaderful behavior for the next day and a half and call it
What behavior?
Leaderful
behavior. So in a self-organizing team that does not have an explicit leader, everybody needs to bring in their own leadership. Everybody leads, which means everybody takes on some degree of responsibility for it going well for everybody. It's going well for everybody. Like, we like to follow people where we have some confidence that they're going to make it best for all of us, even if it's a sacrifice for me at times. Then I willingly acquiesce and say, like, okay, you're willing to do that? It's a shit job. And if that means I get less to eat for a moment, then I'll give up some food so that everybody else survives. Fine. So we start paying attention to that in terms of what arises for us as a contribution or a question, what we share, how much we share, how much of the attention in the group are we taking up, and are we furthering the learning for everybody? Or am I just attracting a lot of attention because I'm feeling a little neglected right here? A lot of what happens in groups when people talk fall in two categories. Yeah, furthering the learning, or I'm a little activated, I'm triggered, and now I just want some loving attention. And the only way to get that is if I start to talk and 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 talk. But now that's just about me, yeah, receiving some attention from the group. And I'm not leading anymore. Versus sometimes these questions go, and then everybody's like, oh, wow, that was right in the space. We wanted that question to arise so that we now are ready to go on to the next level. that make sense?
There's also, by the way, disappearing, activating and disappearing.
Yeah, that's
So there's that piece as
different
well.
mechanisms of
That's another way to
dealing
go.
with activation.
Fascinating.
And so we can watch without doing a whole lot more work on the study group. We can think about if there's another bit to do. This just seems like the most provocative way to start.
It is.
Yeah.
And your offer is extraordinarily provocative, but also fascinating.
Yes.
I mean, it's like you're offering to be a mirror for leadership, how we're showing up as leadership. Well, okay. It's just,
So, for example, it's interesting if you have a training of 30, and then after like a day or two, the group starts to get each other. And then you tell people, like, stop raising your hands before contributing. Like, if you do that on the first day, people talk over each other all the time. But the second or third day, you can actually extend the invitation, even in a large circle. Everybody sort of checks in before they contribute or before they're asking. And suddenly it works. The group understands. Ah. And some recognition around. I mean, we all carry so much hurt around the failures of our parents that we project that hurt on our leaders. And so we reward it with a lot of status. Being a leader is a shit job. Like, just like Peter said, like, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah. And so for all of us to think of, like, okay, what's leaderful behavior in this moment? Now we're also sharing the burden. We're not putting one person into that place that we all can act out on. And there's a guy, Barney Mandel, who observed that he basically made, at some level, he made every contribution in the group impersonal. It is always a voice from the system. And he interacts with individuals as voices of the system and not as individual press leader, but as a voice of the system. So if someone needs to go to the bathroom and clearly that was the voice that says we all need a break. So you start you start holding these contributions differently. And if someone is disruptive and disturbing on some sense, then part of the question is like, okay, what's the disruption that wants to occur here versus the content that was delivered and someone talking about, how unsafe they feel or how hot it is in here or whatever the complaint is. It's just like, okay, here's the disturbance in the field. And the interpretation was it has something to do with the temperature in the room, but really it means that what they've been talking for way too long.
and before you do that, I'm gonna I'll go with you.
For instance.
I thought about that earlier. I lost track of it again.
Nothing important.
The gap. The gap.
That's always
So there's a real, like in family constellations, figuring out what you set up is relatively straightforward. There are a few variations, and if you can't think of anything better, you just go to one of the defaults. Mom, dad, you know, something. In organization constellations, that's a lot more fuzzy. Fuzzy. Like, what are you setting up? What are the moving pieces here that will reveal some useful information? Because there are 10 different ways. So I'm thinking you, your manager, and your prior manager. Just as a sort of, how does that work?
There's also a senior director who used to be my manager, who now is outside of my organizational team, who I've been kind of having regular meetings with as kind of a mentor. So,
And he knows about those ambitions.
yeah. I had all the conversations at the beginning where this one guy, the PDM, the director of PDM design, over the suite of tools that was in my technology stack, and I said, I can do that.
Yes.
And I, so I then inquired, not expecting that since I just got promoted the year before, that I was going to get promoted to director right away again, but that I could take on that job, even at my level. But they decided they weren't going to backfill the role; they were just going to break it up to people, and so it didn't happen.
Okay, so maybe those four. The immediate manager and the two former managers we have mentoring relationships with. And we can just see where there are alliances, where you can expect support.
You can jack up the heat just a little bit. Yeah, or you can just hit power.
That's the air conditioning?
Yeah.
Wow. I guess that would be essential.
Just hit power. It does take a second for it to power off. Yeah. It's absolutely right.
And then somewhere in the back of my head is sort of this question of like the promotion or
The new role. The new role? Yeah, the manager role.
so when I have that much trouble deciding, then I postpone the decision for later. And I don't start there. So we just start with the relationships, knowing that there's this niggling thought about how do we represent or include in the representation that idea of promotion. Make sense? So, it's not the last one you want to ask.
Guy.
GUY. We just ask if we're going to get the fan up just maybe a little bit.
Yeah, we can project. The direct manager, I just manager is good.
His name is Dan.
Dan. The former manager.
Who is his manager, Karen, she's the director.
And then your ally.
Sorry, I'm having told Craig with a K. Kraig.
Now you work with
Senior director. He's a senior. Yeah. No. Yeah. You know, it's weird. I almost feel more vulnerable about this getting X-rayed than my family. Weird.
Maybe there's crossover.
Well, no, it just feels like there's a level of vulnerability. Like
I agree with Christina.
professional status. See ourselves. All right, 4. One more.
Making sure things go well.
Oh, yeah, okay.
From the back. So, manage your activation. There's a little more care for your representatives.
Okay.
That's good. It's just as you're a little nonchalant. This is.
Thank you. So just of your end, sort of tired, thinking Peter's tired, and maybe I should step out of the role and ask someone else to take it. Okay. Oh, Jesus. For Ruth, that's very intense. I saw a little bit of it, but I'm not sure.
So is this quite an exhausting process?
It was, and now I'm activated.
How do you do?
I thought I was fine. I was in line. I was following where I'm supposed to be. And then I felt this presence over here that was like judging me. And I didn't want to see it.
So that's where currently most of your attention is on.
I'm looking forward, but I energetically am like, what is this?
Are you?
They're doing a thing, but there's much more important energy right here. Like they can't see, but
Okay.
it feels like,
Your attention is here.
yeah.
And like, friendly or important
Oh.
or
Kind of aspirationally, really dynamic in some way.
friendly?
Good. I'm relaxed.
Really?
Confident. Big. Sense of expansion here.
Where was most of your attention?
Her. I want to.
That's a good partnership?
Yeah.
Supports your sense of power?
I like
Yeah.
what's happening here. I like
Less self-serving and more just friendly, and
yeah.
that's what I wanted to check. Whether it was a power play or if it was just. Okay.
So so when that one started talking, there got to be a point where I felt like my shoulders grew up. It felt really intense. And then when this one spoke, I realized maybe everything was actually fine. And I turned around. And I'm like, oh, this actually looks okay. Charge kind of back. That one, there was a total charge for a minute. So I turned. See what was going on. I feel like that was a help.
Okay, and who has most of your attention? If anybody stands up.
I think this one actually.
Not super obvious.
No.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it feels easy to look at.
So here's most of your attention. That was Karen, is that right?
Yes, and I still feel like I should be looking everywhere just to check.
No, it's a matrix of attention. Everybody.
But yeah, that's his name.
All right. How are you doing?
Well, I'm better since he turned around. And the energy isn't like doing this strange linear focus forward. We became more aware of each other. Everything got better, more relaxed. For me, it did. Yeah.
So where's most of your attention? Where do you feel most comfortable or mostly aligned with? Yep.
What's hard to keep his
So
attention.
like here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give me a favor.
Okay.
Neutral. Where's most of your attention? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. At a higher level, everybody here is serving sort of the technology support, like the goal of
Yeah, I
the
mean,
technology.
so up until about a month ago, everyone in the organization was under business intelligence. As of about a month ago, 3 of the 4 people in this constellation got moved under a different group, DevOps.
Yep.
Where Craig remained in business intelligence.
So DevOps and BizOps, the overlap. If you abstract who business intelligence and DevOps is serving, then that is serving technology.
The CIO.
CIO.
Yeah.
As purpose for this group. Away. Thanks. Oh, so we do go as a collective, I guess, lots of the bigger system.
Did you name them?
Yes, this is the goal. This is
Goal.
the goal, the outcome that as a department, as a system that you're serving. So let's see if there's an impulse to move relative to the outcome that you want. Find your place. What's happening for you?
I don't know, it's like I have a sinking feeling.
Yeah.
Almost nauseous.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can't really look at that one. It's more.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get away.
I'll do it.
Whoa, man.
How you do?
I'm not liking this dispersal
No.
that's happening. Like
Yep.
she was my ally.
Yep.
And I don't know what was happening with him. I feel rejected by him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the energy I had with this one than I did at first.
And at first the energy was.
I felt judged.
Oh, okay.
But now I think that has shifted over to that one. And this feels like generally neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Like, weren't we supposed to do this? But now everyone's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happened to our goal?
yeah.
You know?
Marcus, I don't
Why
want
is
this
it so
alone.
scary? Yeah.
I don't want this alone.
Yeah.
And you said the reorganization was a month ago?
Yeah.
Obviously that was not.
Buy-in? Not,
There was what?
not a
Not
buy-in.
a lot of buy-in.
No.
Yeah. I feel like my whole thing is to try to remember what the goal is. Like I'm sitting here trying to make sure I can remember there's a goal. And that's what I'm doing. I don't have any personal investment in anyone else. I'm suddenly all I care about is this goal.
That nobody's paying attention to anymore.
Right, but I'm there.
They're miserable.
I want to be there. Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, this feels like the last thing to hang on to because everything else
Right.
is dispersed.
Yeah.
But
Right.
that makes it a little
Daunting.
dangerous. Yeah.
This is what's left. Okay.
How are you doing? I'm not terribly concerned about any of this. Yep. You're just there. Here. Yeah. How are you doing?
I feel pretty good. I'm interested in those too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like her. I'm less nauseous. So.
So step away a little bit, turn to them, and say something like, I thought we had a good.
I just can't do it.
wasn't asked.
Yeah, I wasn't asked.
Were you asked? Were you part of the agreement?
No.
What you said? I didn't agree.
I didn't agree.
I wasn't asked.
I wasn't asked.
Are you away from them?
So do the same thing. I thought we had an agreement.
I thought we had an agreement.
Were you asked?
I don't think I was asked. I'm still trying to do it.
There was no change for this one.
Still, if there's a big reorg, some people are included in the decision, some people aren't.
I'm still trying to go along, but it's gotten uncomfortable.
I don't feel like 1%.
Fair enough. So I put you in as a CIO.
Oh, interesting.
So generally the buck stops there.
Oh.
But there's a leadership team around it. So. And it's a little bit outside of the scope, so we get a little fuzzy there.
Oh, we also have the CIO is new as of 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Never mind.
so
Our CIO of like 4 or 5 years, left the company and was replaced internally by someone internally, a woman, who's our new CIO as of 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so there's enough. No, because she was internally, she was replaced internally. There's culpability. If you get a new person from the outside,
Yeah.
then that would just be a
Yeah.
But there's culpability.
yeah, definitely like what they were like.
And so that makes sense why there was like, I feel like multiple people, because part of the culpability was when you were still the leadership team, and now you're the CIO, you're representing the CIO, dealing with the decision you made earlier in a different place. So that makes sense.
And there was definite consternation when they were like, "You want to ask that come up?" You know.
So turn to them. You didn't ask.
We didn't ask. It feels better just to acknowledge. Like, yeah, that's leadership. You know, you do things, sometimes make mistakes.
You get hated.
What, sorry?
You get hated.
Right, and you still, like you said, the book stuff. You accept that as part of the job. We're gonna hate it sometimes. Hate what you do.
I think you saying that brings me in a little.
And I feel appreciative of you trying to, help things.
Try and be on the other side.
A little less comfortable here.
Okay, that's all.
Wow. Okay.
I like that you're taking yourself like shit show.
Actually, the truth is, she's not ready yet.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure I go that far.
Because at the moment, you're in the leadership role.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Yes. Yep.
So she's willing to follow you, and you don't have the authority. Now you're carrying the burden without the authority. She has the authority, and she's not carrying the burden.
She's still getting
That's
up to
not so
speed.
good for me.
She's still getting up to speed, basically.
No, she's up to speed. Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. Fair enough. It's a bigger job. And because she's been promoted from inside, there's no real surprise for her what her job is.
But what you just said indicates a willingness to take the burden. And that's why I felt like, yeah,
So I'm willing to support you,
I'm willing to support you.
and we need better leadership.
And we need their leadership. Which is makes my heart go with that a little bit.
It's risky to say.
It's better than me.
Better than your leadership.
That could be misleading
Okay.
because with your current level of power, you
are
can't step into that leadership. So of course you're in a shitty position. If you had her power, you might be just fine wanting it.
Okay.
I mean, if you had the power to go with the burden,
Oh.
you might be fine.
So it wasn't like the power just shifted. It was like I never really.
We each
You never had the power. What, 2, 3 levels below the CIO? Senior director?
Yeah, senior director. Yeah,
So is
so
it 2?
yeah, at least two or three.
Yes. So you're way below on the total.
Senior director is still pretty up there, but not a VP, not an EVP, not a CIO.
Yes. So 3 layers above. So you don't have a lot of power. Relative to power. I'm willing to support you.
I'm willing to support you.
I would appreciate being honest.
I would appreciate it. Yeah, but it rose up a little bit. So that.
And I feel like I know that I need her.
Oh yeah. So try minutes. Be over here.
Yeah, it's better this time. I have this context though that I'm helping you step forward by coming here.
There definitely feels like some aspect of sharing responsibility.
But that feels good. Like I want that for you, for the benefit of everyone.
That it feels kind of like I need to do my job. Like more need to do what I need. Like your knowledge.
Maybe just one point of clarification. This new CIO, this woman, was not part of the technology organization. She was over in like the PDM. She was not part of the technology organization.
So she's not a techie, really.
No, but
Yeah.
So I'm very dependent on this person.
Yeah.
So I lead and you solve our problems.
And you solve the problems.
I need to be acknowledged.
That's okay.
Okay.
I see my job
I see my job
as creating the circumstances for you to succeed.
as creating the circumstances for your success.
Like that.
So
Is it more than just
look over there in the corner and say, tell her the same thing. I'm not a techie, and I see my role, or it's my responsibility to make sure you.
It's my responsibility to make sure you can succeed.
Okay. Oh, I want to have that. That's something to use.
Starting to feel the love too.
Yeah.
You're connected.
Yeah.
That's where I get used from.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
How are you?
Well, I'm kind of gravitating that way.
Yes. That's a little gravitational push.
Yeah. Good.
It feels like, wow.
That's good.
So you are focuses on the goal. This is your responsibility. And that's primary direction of attention. And Everybody else takes partly cue from the leader, and part of their attention is on the goal. So a little bit both. You're holding the goal, the vision, and where the journey goes, and everybody else sort of figures out where does the journey go and what does the journey look like. That takes cues. Make eye contact over there. Yeah. I have a lot of attention on the goal.
I have a lot of attention on the goal.
I can make a contribution
And make a contribution
beyond my current role.
beyond my current role.
Who knew?
Still feeling judged?
No, not from her.
Where's the judgment coming from now?
I still feel a discomfort here.
So apparently Craig has some pattern about being judged.
Okay.
So turn to this one. I have a lot of attention on the goal,
I have a lot of attention on the goal,
even when other people are bucking.
even when other people are.
I have a bigger contribution.
I have a bigger contribution to make here,
I could use your support.
and I could use your support.
A little bit more than usual.
Would you say that? Yeah.
Mhm. I have a lot of attention on the goal, and I can make a much bigger contribution here. I'd really like your support.
Absolutely. All
Can't see anything.
You want to bring this box?
Sure.
Thank you for the honor of being here.
Doesn't matter. Indeed, you were the last one, like you were willing to just go for it.
I always have my attention on making sure.
So take credit for it. Yeah, there are people around you who are buckling. So you can represent that with ownership when you're in conversation with this. So you are the senior director that is in a different reporting line, but underneath that, all in the same larger group. You're the director, the prior manager, and the current.
Fascinating view. It's sorry, I suddenly got a hit of like when I actually dropped in to just check in, I noticed there's this resistance to actually being fully present, which for me, just being Guy, I'm like, gosh, that seems awfully isomorphic with respect to my position in my family.
So here's a good opportunity to create a contribution.
Okay.
To that family role.
I mean, obviously, I have stepped in more than I have before, and yet, when you say that, I'm present to that there's still a part of me that, yeah. But I want to be here. I have more to contribute. Damn it.
So oftentimes at work, it's easier for us to create these contradictions than in our private lives because it's a little less personal. So here's an opportunity to create a contradiction in your life. Yeah? It's a little less, there's a little less emotional wiring in the way than maybe in other places.
Contradiction meaning being willing to step in control. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm obviously I am doing that and I'm wanting to do that even more so. Yeah, but that
So here's the support. I mean, these people are essentially on the side.
Yeah, no, and that's a great frame. I'm getting how like this then becomes like a training wheels for stepping into a deeper level of I exist. Yeah.
And this is a very typical resolution to an organizational constellation. Yeah, there's an outcome. There's the person in authority, and we arbitrarily made it the CIO, it could be the CEO, it could be a business, it doesn't matter, department head. Or whatever context in the systems we're working, yeah, we have a person in authority. And then we have appropriate levels of seniority. A contribution title, yeah, resident genius, and that's the stuff we figure out because it's not always just following the hierarchical steps of the title. But that's a good start.
I appreciated that you named that I had my attention on the goal.
That was really noticeable. Particularly because the people right above you were checking out.
Gee, that was fascinating.
I mean, but you know, a month after reorg,
Yeah.
that is no surprise. That is the price
Yeah.
that people aren't recognizing. Yeah, it's happening, and they're doing these major surgical moving deck chairs. Yeah, and chaos there.
Yeah. Fascinating. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know you, but I hope to be impressed by your leadership. Okay.
Thank you.
This in the back, yeah.
That was very fascinating.
That was really cool.
So let's just sort of reflect a little bit on some of the movements we saw here. So a big piece that shows up in organizations all the time is a mismatch between responsibility and authority. And sort of fundamentally, for anybody to be on their 2 feet in business or in an organization, we need to match the two. If I'm responsible for X outcome, then I need to be able to make the decisions that affect X outcome. If I'm responsible for the outcome, but I don't have any budget or power to make decisions, then I'm being micromanaged. Someone is hoarding power and delegating responsibility.
Oh boy.
Got all kinds of lights going off right
Happens
now.
all the time. Those are failures in leadership. Or the other way around, the moment, where the CIO, the new lady on the block, has more authority, but wanted the junior people to be in the leadership role. And it's a tricky place when you come from when you are purely a manager, you don't have domain expertise. So now you're a cheerleader, you're setting rules and you're working with budgets and you're working with decision making, but everybody else's opinion on the subject matter overrules yours because you're clueless. And I've coached a lady who came out of inside sales and took over IT because IT had a lousy manager. And she had no idea about technology. But she was a people person. And she could figure out who in the group knew what needed to happen and who should make which technology decision. And she cleaned up the place in 2 months. And the IT problems were gone. So it can totally work. It's a very different kind of leadership. So little tricky, the new person, the new CIO is in a tricky place. And she's not quite, from what we can tell, a little bit already beyond our capability. She's obviously working shit up.
Yeah.
Which is possible.
It's just fascinating to me how this shit is just. The knowing effing field. Indeed.
And then there's a lot of testing, in particular here where we're guessing, about what is the right sentence that would help these people to work out. And really an acknowledgement of, okay, there's not the technology expertise, but I'm responsible for the circumstances that help you make the decisions in person. That seems pretty clear. If you're willing to accept that position without domain expertise, that would be obvious. And somebody has confidence in it, because CIO for a company like that is critical. Like failure to.
How does this, when we do some work, but does it affect the organization? Well, yeah, like would Karen, would she feel more comfortable if she was checked out and feeling awful and so would she feel would that affect the work with a real person, how she feels about?
Yeah, just like in families, it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've facilitated constellations where it was about conflict, and after much to do, the resolution was to meet with the other manager that suddenly there's turf war. And to just go out for dinner and remember that they also are friends. And the guy went back to the office and 3 days later called me, but you would never believe it. Paul just came into the office and said to go out for dinner and not talk business. So the other person initiated the resolution that we came to after, I don't know, a very long constellation.
Nice.
And they were already, this was a legal battle. They already had communicated with other just 2 lawyers for at least 2 months. So is the field, and by the time you're operating in a system of the size of the gap, the systemic, it's an ocean liner. They don't make sudden turns. They shouldn't dilute it. If they were, something would break. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So a family unit is a very small system. By the time you expand it to a couple hundred or thousand, the way the impact of the field shows up is way subtler than we might observe that. So the examples that I have around the family system are way more numerous than around what happens. It's just way bigger, more complex, and just moves slower. The ocean liner does not make sharp U-turns.
I have a question I'm not sure you can answer.
I'll
But-
have an opinion anyway.
Yes. I look forward to it. So 90% of the time when I don't do a lot of organizational constellations, but sometimes they come across I just did one for a teacher recently. And I'm up for it. Probably not 90% of the time. I'll say 60% of the time. My organizational constellations turn into family constellations. Now, I know you talked about blended, and that's not uncommon. However, I was watching you and doing this with Guy and the Gap, and it seemed to me when I was kind of checking into your facilitation, it's like setting the bandwidth, and I've talked with them about this metaphor before of what are we including and excluding as a matter of stance. And there's something in there around like you're declaring to the knowing field, we're doing an organizational constellation here right now. And to the degree that any of Guy's personal family systemics might show up, that's not what we're up to right here. I mean, if it sort of waved a flag and said, you must look at this, I'm sure you would have. But there's something about your stance in that particular one that informed the field around staying in organizational space. And to the degree that you can talk to that, that would just be personally helpful and maybe to them as well. Because I find because my strength is family constellations, there's a slippage. And I'm curious about strengthening the ability to stay in an organizational field when that seems to be what's called for.
So, in the organizational context, this dynamic between authority and responsibility, power and burden, a lot of my attention is on that.
Mm.
And in a decision like this, where there's a big reorganization, and now half the organization goes catatonic because they've been put in a place where they're either uncomfortable or they can't succeed, or they have this uphill battle, or, I mean, the reorg puts a lot of people in a bad place. Who takes ownership of that? So testing some of the sentences of like, okay, we didn't ask, or we asked, or you agreed, or you didn't agree, like, oh, okay, so you were told. That's part of taking ownership and acknowledging what is. And then maybe to some extent rejiggering, like you were laughing about being micromanaged, so yeah. What are the sentences that rejigger that balance? So that there is more ownership or less, or it's an actual delegation of authority versus just delegating the task and responsibility. How can we reclaim that and get the two in an appropriate balance? And with it, I mean, this is sort of tied in a little bit with order and a little bit with partly order and partly the balance of giving and taking. So balance of authority, like power and burden, is giving and taking. If I take on the burden, I get the privilege of making decisions or having the final word. And when that's out of whack, everybody knows and loses trust that good things happen.
I'm loving this, and I'm not sure if I'm clear how this relates to Leslie's question, or if it is intended to.
Awesome. So that is, I think I went down that path as describing my stance. When I am focused on authority and responsibility, I stay within the organization.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me.
Because that is primarily an organizational dynamic. And I'm ignoring whether the guy has a family history of not standing, that showed up at the very end. We just touched on it. During the Constellation, I was realigning responsibility and power within the organization so that people actually live and stand in a place that is actionable. Because particularly, if we micromanage, we disempower. And then suddenly, you're in a hopeless spot where you're not making useful contributions. And you're taking life.
What that makes me think is that there's some sort of principles and frameworks and questions that are particularly organizational systemics. That I have a subset, and most of us here are family frameworks, principles, and questions that are in a family context. And it makes me remember that you and I agreed, probably not today, for you to talk with them a little bit, probably briefly in the morning or something, about what's useful to put in the toolkit if you're going to work in organizational constellations in terms of other learning. So that, because like this whole thing you just mentioned is kind of what OD people know.
So like orders of war.
Yeah, but even more beyond that, outside of the Hungarian way of thinking.
I mean, for example, like in an organization, power usually expresses itself in two ways: decision-making and access to information. The right to know, the ability to know, and therefore I can start influencing and actually acting on what I know, and what I have the power to decide. That's what power in organization is.
Who has a good office?
That's status. That's not power.
What was it? I didn't know.
Status. A nice office.
A nice office is status, but it's not power.
You can fake power by status. It's not actual power.
Right.
So there are people in corner offices who are basically on a dead-end road and nobody listens. They're neutralized in the corner office. They can't do any damage. And everybody knows how to work around them and how decisions are actually getting made. And minimizing the harm to the organization.
You said something earlier that I've been thinking about regarding types of power and the difference between micromanaging, which we understand as maybe not taking the amount of burden that's equivalent to the power, versus delegating kind of power where you, maybe I'm answering my own question, are more clear about like what you know and what they know and just sorting it out correctly. I would just, maybe can you tease it out a little more about the difference between micromanaging power and delegating power?
Yes. So when I micromanage, I tell you, you're responsible to accomplish, like you're now responsible to balance the American budget, the US budget. And I haven't given you any tools to actually follow through. Now you're being micromanaged. Or this is a little bit extreme. You're responsible to increase sales and revenue, but I have all the budget decisions. So additional marketing or additional advertising or additional sales reps, all that goes through me. But I'm holding you responsible for the outcome. So now you're screwed.
So familiar, yeah. Mhm. So
That's
it's the good way.
That's the conversation we have.
Yeah.
I'd love to take care of that. But then I do need some ability to affect X, Y, and Z without having to come to you for every time I make a change. So that part of the delegation process becomes a negotiation around the resources and how much authority I have to distribute or manage the resources. Like just to change my goal, but to leave everything else in place. Yeah, then you already know that, okay, that's a shit show. Now I'm being set up to fail.
That helps. Thanks.
Maybe this is just a language thing, but the dynamic that you described where you're being given all of the responsibility but none of the authority, or, I don't normally think of that as micromanaging. I think of micromanaging as basically someone coming in and being very directive, like, rather than saying, okay, I need you to fix this problem, they're coming in and they're saying, okay, I'm going to stand here while you fix this problem. Go to this line. No, go there. Go back over. Like that directive.
Yes.
That's micromanaging.
Yes.
From like an individual contributor level.
Yes. So at the task level, at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Micromanaging is what to do and how to do.
Okay.
So versus what to do and letting you figure out how to do it.
Okay.
Because the resources, my technical expertise, and the decisions I make along the way. That's my resource. And your request of me to fix the desktop stuff is reasonable because it's within my skill level, and I have the resources now to actually solve that problem for me. But now you're standing over my shoulder and telling me how to solve it. Like, okay, hire a monkey. So at the very bottom, that's what micromanaging looks like. By the time you get to middle management and higher up, nobody tells you how. Now it's just you're not getting the budget, you're not getting, every time you make a decision, you have to actually double check, have a permission to it. Yeah. And so it wasn't really delegating. And I'm just constantly having to backtrack.
Yeah.
And when I do something on my own initiative, I get punished for it.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? So higher up in the organization, that's where it starts to show up.
Okay. Got it.
At the individual contributor level, it is that breathing over your shoulder.
Okay.
Holding this.
So I'm wondering, we're at 5:05. There might be a need for a little bit of a tea break. What you think about the last 45 minutes of the day, Volker? That was a groan somewhere in the room.
It was just stretching.
Oh, okay, good.
I mean,
How's that sound, Volker?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm wrapped. I'm finding myself very deeply engaged. I'm like, who needs to go to the bathroom? Come on, we can do it. Push through.
Okay. But
Okay, all right.
Actual brain.
We'll
Like with that one,
really guy.
you know, we're still smiling, so I'd say.
He was wrapped.
Nice battery.
I think he's
To
just
be-
taking care of some
Yeah,
things.
it's a lot of energy.
Wants to meet him later.
Of course.
So you get a lot of.
I think he's so proud.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm.
So
So yeah,
what are we doing?
What do you wonder?
it's not only
Mother
giving.
Earth isn't so bad.
What does Irina want to do?
What is it?
I said, what do you want to do?
So let's move into the space in each other. And let's just notice what arises for each of us. What else do we remember?
I had an idea, maybe we can sort of do like the case studies if you tell us the case that you had, and we can practice like, you know, a structure course or some way to set it up.
Yeah.
And, you know, not have to go through with them, but just to practice thinking about looking at it organizationally, something like that. Looking at the power and what's that? Authority and responsibility, power and burden, something like that. Just to begin to use that muscle
Yes.
without doing a full presentation because I'm not sure that we. Or maybe somebody's ready to try it. I don't know.
So I like the idea, and the limitation is that constellations don't work in the hypothetical. So the idea of a case study is a little too hypothetical
We would need a real situation.
for something
Yes.
to work.
Sure. Yeah.
I actually have, so there's something like archetypal constellations.
Yeah.
Where you can set up the manager and the employee where the manager micromanages. And you'll just, and we all recognize how that plays out. And that is sort of in an archetypal way.
I think that's kind of what I mean. I didn't say case study, but yeah. Obviously that.
But then,
Constellations.
but in those, there's not a lot of facilitation. We just watch the train wreck and realize, I don't want to be better. And that's the end of it. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of facilitation in those because you just set it up, see how it plays out, and you realize like, oh yeah, that's painful. Oh. So
So we can practice, right? Is this practice time?
practice time. I would like to shift this towards practice time. And I mean, one way of going would be do some triad exercise where we can set up me and my relationship to money or to success or to building my own business or, you know, I mean, there may be some variation, but they're also, but it's me and I get to watch two people just reflected back for me for like 3 minutes. We do a little debrief, we switch, we look at it kind of like that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Leslie's done some of that.
So you have this comment with us.
Business.
So, and again, that's not a lot of practicing facilitation. That's just getting a sort of a quick look. The other thing that where my attention went, like you were brave enough earlier to volunteer to co-lead, and I'd be willing to try that out as a way of practicing facilitation. And we're doing a little constellation for somebody, and we make an agreement, design an alliance for how we could. Does that, so So check your name. These are a few options. Where does your attention go?
I like that one personally. I would be interested just to participate watching it.
Which means that one more person would get a Constellation because you'd need a client for that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. Yeah, I don't understand co-leading at all. It seems.
Would it be an organization or a family or what? Just anything?
My bias would be towards organization.
Right.
And, we have 40 minutes, so it's going to be brief and relatively straightforward.
Sure. I'll see.
Okay, who would like a constellation? Who has something cooking?
Another organization.
I'm trying to think if I have something organizational. I'm not really part of many organizations right now.
For what it's worth, I do have an organizational thing, but I just want to say that as an instructor here, it's not my right to take anybody's place of a constellation, but if that was of interest.
Sure, who knows?
I'm okay with
Feels
that.
like it
What's the
would
scenario?
serve the rest of the
It's around my business.
I was just watching how many layers were scrambling, and not just. Okay.
I could give one more sentence of specificity.
Awesome.
I've been getting lots of messages that I need to think of it on a much bigger scale,
Yeah.
and I can't or won't.
Okay.
Now, I know that there's personal stuff in there too,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to look at that from strictly straight up organizational point of view.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. But again, if anyone here has an organizational issue or something, I'd come second to that. It's really important in terms of my contract with the group.
How are you doing?
I mean, I'm having a lot of challenges with work, and I feel like I could pick stuff apart. But I also feel like I took time this morning, and so I want to leave space for.
Okay. So here's space.
I'm aware of what Lee has been talking about, like building your business in house. That I'm not sure if you feel comfortable in here or not.
Actually, I'm more interested in something that happened that's over and left a lot of residue that was about organizational on a national scale.
So how much authority do you have over that national situation?
How much did I have?
Yes.
Not nearly enough. Yes.
So I don't want to set up a constellation complaining about Trump.
Oh, it's long before Trump.
No. But,
Oh,
but
right,
at the
yes.
scale of like,
Oh, yeah, right.
yeah, on a
No.
national scale, we have an idiot. It's like, okay, we all know, and it's beyond our pay grade.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and there's no constellation. So whatever gripe we have about a national scale problem is only interesting if you had a national scale of problem.
Right. I tried to get to that place.
Okay, so give
Yeah.
me a little more detail.
My mother was an aeronautical engineer in World War II. She was one of 900 women who were trained by the biggest manufacturer of airplanes in World War II, Curtiss Wright. And they were trained in 7 different universities. My mother was one in one of
What's
those.
your stake?
I'm sorry?
What's your stake?
My stake was that I was trying to kind of open up the possibilities for women in general to be part of aeronautical design. And I saw what my mother and her compatriots had done, and I was like, oh, this is obvious. They're alive still. I can tell their stories. I can make this really exciting and open up a place in the national scene in universities and Smithsonian. I went to all these different places to do it. And this is saying I felt that what really happened was I had a personal investment in it about my mother that, was my great cause, motivating force, rectifying imbalance of power. And then I realized, I had this big wound, and
Nobody else cared.
And no one else cared enough about it for me to power on through without more authority and resources from other women who could not get behind it, who would like to and were disempowered themselves. So it became, for me, a national thing. Women in this country kept out of aeronautical design. That's where it was. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I wrote a book and published it. It's all over. So.
So kind of an activist cause.
Very activist cause. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we could just fix the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a good choice.
So
I don't know that that's organizational. I mean, I dipped into zillions of organizations to try to do this.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
activism definitely
Yeah.
is.
Right?
And
Maybe it's too big for a 33 minutes. I don't know.
no,
Yeah.
activism. I need to sit with it. To how to set that up in a useful way
Uh-huh.
that isn't just about feeling your rules around it.
Right.
Because that was the motivating factor. You had no authority
Mm-hmm.
and you took on a lot of responsibility and cause.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody else was willing to share authority with you or empower you or get behind you, align with you.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and activism is a tricky thing where if our leader leads too much to the room,
Mm-hmm.
they're just not willing to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that there is something that motivates us in the first place, and so it's always somewhat personal.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's also true for successful leaders. But how the proportion of that makes all the difference in terms of how much support we're actually able to garner.
How much at the point what?
How much support we're actually able to garner.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Martin Luther King was Black and African American.
Right.
He knows what discrimination felt like.
Yeah.
When he is on the stage, he did not feel like a discriminated Black man.
No. Right.
So people were willing to follow him.
Mm-hmm. And I did that. I focused totally on the strength and intelligence and creativity of women. I stayed on that.
That's your cause.
Yeah, that was.
But where you were, how cleanly you were in touch with your personal struggle around the room versus with your leadership and focus on the book.
Yeah.
And if there's too much attention on how I'm hurt, then people kind of like.
It was very underground for me. I really wasn't spreading it around like that.
Oh no, we radiate. Particularly if we're unconscious of it, then we're having it tattooed on our forehead.
Well, yeah.
The only way to hold that in check is being really aware.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're owning our rule.
Yeah. Mm.
So in other words, that's a family constellation.
You
What
think,
you're asking for is a family constellation.
Yes and no. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure. It's just a family thing.
No, it's a patriarchy and a culture not ready. I mean, that's true. That's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think personally, Leslie's question is interesting and feels relevant to me too about like being at a level
Yep.
You know, and then seeing the potential for opening up to that higher level, but having blocks, and that feels like very
That feels
Relative.
relevant here too.
So,
Yeah.
Amy, please come here.
So I just want to say, while I was listening to John V, I was saying, this is not in order. So
Okay.
I got to double check with the group on this to make it really clean, because I'm not paying for constellations here. I'm being paid. So this is back to the systemics of my role here in the room.
Yes.
So I just want to be real. I want to make sure it's super clean. I'm gonna, leave it to the co-leaders here, because I listening. I was like, it's not in order. So I just want to name that.
I'm willing to have one on my business, my side business.
I know, I feel that way too. Like, I could do something along those lines. Probably all of us could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got multiple options.
I mean, we've had the talk about being like balanced and constellations. So it was.
Right.
So it feels like,
You want to pay attention to that. Yes.
yeah.
The side business. I just have it. Just so Amy has
I'm Christina, that's Amy.
Christina
I feel like John B and Jeff are priority because they have the least.
Well, again, for what?
I think maybe John V is.
What is a simple way of thinking about your constellation effort in house?
Constellations in Taos,
Yeah.
totally switching over out
That's
of
what you
this.
said earlier. Versus
Well, I see.
historically cleaning up some
Right,
from
right.
historic notes
Yeah.
about the failed initiative.
Yeah.
Like
Failed
what's alive?
activist.
So what's alive today?
Okay. I want to get to a place where I'm attracting the trust of people, of the many diverse kinds of people that live there. And I'm finding a voice that says something that any of them can hear. That's not too particular about my history.
So we make me green, huh?
That's fine.
So our holy dance is going to be like a constellation within a constellation. So you can think about our relationship as you, me, and a third entity. The relationship entity, that is what you and I bring in combination. And now we're both just following what arises out of the third entity. So it's not my impulse, it's not your impulse. We're listening to our third entity. Yeah? Whatever that means, we don't know, but it's our little constellation deal, and we just have our attention there as a way of proceeding, and whatever arises out of that, we'll trust. Just like in facilitation, you step into the field, and then whatever arises, you trust, and you test it. And if it doesn't fit, I can nudge you, you can nudge me, we can signal, we can say like, oh no. But as an impulse, we're doing that together. Let's try it. So what I heard from John V was her voice, and the ideal. Maybe someone for not everybody's now ideal time, so maybe something to represent the not ideal time, the rest of times.
still tending to look at it.
Mhm. What would that be?
Um, it's a different.
Like you can fully lean on. Like source something out of me, yeah, that supports your sense of certainty about what arises. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Energy. Okay, work price admission just as well. Thank you. Wow.
I'm getting hot too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
seriously.
Yeah. My hands are like sweating.
That's cold, you know.
That is
Yeah.
So, bring anxiety and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, I'm not good enough, but it's something that I've seen is.
So we get to see that when we're setting up the contrast between her and her voice. Because that, in that, that is whatever we do to ourselves and we doubt ourselves and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that shows up in that one.
Yes,
So we'll get to see it when we do.
that's right. Concerned about how she can communicate. Yep. Yes.
So we're trying.
Yes.
Good start. Okay.
Because there's various cultures.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you have one kind and just know that this is
So, or you know, the interested client and the client who's skeptical. It may be ideal. I mean, the skeptical people, you know, maybe that's fun. So that'd be a weird way of distinguishing.
yeah, I like that.
How do you spell it?
So it looks like Jean, Jean, capital V, small I.
There's the other dash between.
Yeah, a little hyphen.
No, yes.
Voice? What client did you say? The skeptical client?
Mhm.
As we get close to 6 o'clock, is there anybody who's got a drop dead, gotta leave at 6? Or just, yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a few, so just.
All right, 4 volunteers. John, you come up here, take your pieces of paper.
So I should sit here next to you guys then, huh?
Yeah, you can sit here in my chair.
Okay.
2 more.
Not it.
Not it with the 6 o'clock deadline.
Oh, we'll get 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Jeff gets looked at.
Have so much resistance.
All right, and now gently and expediently set them up.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-mm. Is I supposed to?
No.
And so mix the tension, broad, focus the tension a little bit on each other and a little bit on what's happening here. And my invitation for you to start us off.
Are you noticing?
I mean, at this point, I'm just like, there's all this energy over here with all these people, and I'm not facing it. So I'm kind of like honoring the position I was put in, but not comfortable with not staying this way. So I guess I want to move.
Invite you to.
Please.
True for all of you. If you feel like you're in the wrong place, go ahead and vote.
How are you doing over here?
Good. Yeah, I needed to move.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to see them, like something like this.
So in general, we get curious about the number of groups. Yeah, that shows the biggest, where the impact is the most. What's happening with this guy?
That's gonna be my next question. Yes.
Okay. I like this one. Who has most of your attention?
Oh, it's one of these two. Or maybe both. Yeah. I think it's yeah. This one I mean I'm aware that that was there, but I don't this one and this one I like.
Fairly neutral on. I really want to keep off the sites. What's the type? Yeah.
Yes. Which one is?
Yes. You have most of your attention.
Ever since I came over here, it's her. It's this one.
And before?
This feels kind of grounding. Feel okay being close to this one. But I'm not sure about this one. I feel the attention, and I'm not sure I'm totally safe with it.
I kind of want to stay equidistant. Yeah. So what is your attention?
I'm curious about how this one sees that one.
Yeah. Or actually, at this point, maybe just an invitation to connect. To turn to each other, make eye contact, and recognize.
Yeah.
Let's see
See
what
what
happens.
happens. Yes.
That's co-leading. This
Yes.
is rhymes for both of them.
Yes.
I want to yield to you. And pushing.
Okay, that's great.
Um, well, this one, I don't know how to say it. I mean, I feel fairly neutral, and that my feeling about this one is that there's a weight to it, like that this one is representing not a person, but some, like maybe a collection of people or something. And they feel very weighty, and I feel okay. It's interesting, before you asked to have us turn, I wanted to like skip around circles. There's part of me that kind of like, okay, I'll be here, and like I kind of just want to scoot
Or be a
around.
butterfly.
Yeah.
Here a little, there a little.
Yeah.
Right in the
I
middle.
just want to like move around.
How are you doing? I feel like this one's not comfortable. Pushing, sort of pushing. Do you want to push, or is that just you observing
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
happening?
you feel
Just-
or at least keeping me at distance, not forcing me back any further, but don't.
How do you feel about it?
We'll do this. I'm not quite sure. I don't feel strong attraction or expulsion.
Let's try this. You too.
You too.
You feel right? Wait for you or something. Not really.
Oh, good to hear it. Actually, part of me just kind of relaxed.
That feels true.
Like, yeah.
So yeah, you're intimidating.
You're intimidating me, but I don't feel like it's like they're doing you. You know, I'm intimidated.
Sorry. Turn it around.
I'm interested in when you're speaking and with my interest in when I get closer.
Yeah, barely, but yeah.
Thanks.
I'm glad she came closer in this way. I like us both being here with this one in the middle. Me too. Yeah.
So I'm curious about how those two look.
Who has most of your attention for those two?
It's a close call, but maybe this one.
Okay. You remember
Yes,
which one was it?
she's interested clients.
Oh, the interested one.
Yeah.
Thank
And-
God.
Makes it
was
so much
worried-
easier.
I was worried we had a bigger problem.
My interest in this one did increase when I had this sort of safety going on, and I could like really see.
So say to this one, okay, you represent safety.
You represent safety.
Or maybe your clarity makes me safe.
Your clarity makes me safe.
Does that feel right to say?
Yeah, I think so.
You're not into it.
Do you want to sit up here?
I can see. No, good. I'm good, thanks. Yeah, Kelsey's guy, though, I should see. Oh,
Anything happening for you?
Feel a little bit more relaxed. Yeah, like yeah, just kind of acknowledging that I felt intimidated. Then there was a part of me that could just like not have to be man, just like
Not pretending, not having
yeah,
to
yeah,
pretend.
yeah. And it's like okay, and then I feel better. I'm like, I feel like okay.
So say to this one, I don't want to have to pretend.
I don't want to have to
I'm only as clear as I am.
I'm only as clear as I am.
I like that.
How did that end for you?
I'm not really sure what that means. Clear as I am, I'm not clear on what that means.
So just say, I'm here. I'm here. I'm willing to support. I'm willing to support. I'm willing to give your clarity voice.
I'm willing to give your clarity voice.
Does that make sense? Feel right?
Not to me.
Does it feel right? Or does it feel wrong to say and just
Kind of,
reject it?
no, it didn't feel completely wrong. It didn't feel like, oh yeah, that's right or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
How's that for you?
Well, I liked it at first when you were, you know, the wiggle over here felt less than sourcing, you know, but it is what it is.
Yeah. You're the source.
Okay,
Just say it in the space. I'm the source.
I'm the source.
Mm.
Whew.
Mm.
Hey, that feels good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It feels like I'm stepping into authority. That feels good.
That's what I'm saying again. Stepping into my authority.
Stepping into my authority. That feels good.
And I'll lean on you to voice it.
And I lean on you to voice it.
you willing to stand next to him? See if that would affect you. Are you with that? In honor of time, would you step into your place and just get a little feel for what that's like?
Thank you for the honor. I'll leave it with you.
So help her step into that place with some of the sentences and the movements that we just went through around authority.
Person, I'm only as clear as I am.
I'm only as clear as I am. Um, That was easier when the voice was here, facing the voice.
So turn to the voice.
I'm only as clear as I am.
What's the second one?
I'm stepping into my authority.
I'm stepping into my authority.
I know what I know.
I know what I know. And you can say it for me.
Okay. All right, perfect. So let's turn around and just briefly connect to your clients, both the interested ones and the ones that need a little convincing. Both of them calibrate their sense of safety through your voice. And without that, they're not safe with you.
Are we gonna? You're gonna reveal the other roles?
Oh,
Yeah.
Robbie,
voice.
Voice.
Skeptical client.
Interested in clients.
Interested.
It's skeptical.
Oh, interest client and skeptical client. Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
I don't know
the voice. So I thought we had it so
No,
explicitly.
no,
Really.
no,
Okay,
no.
sorry. Gloss over that.
The
Alright,
voice,
thank
you mean like the actual voice or like the writing, like expression? Because I'm confused what you meant by voice. Just voice in the world. It could be like a writing.
I know what I know.
Writing an advertisement is a voice, right? Where it's actually speaking.
So it's the inner part that's going to be heard. So yes, physically, it's the voice.
Yeah.
But really, we're talking about an inner part that's willing to be heard, that's willing to speak.
And her perceive.
Ego.
Yes,
Seems
that-
heard,
like literally the one who chooses to open her mouth. You can have all sorts of thoughts and understandings,
So
and
when you put the voice outside of yourself,
Yeah. That's interesting.
you're not just listening to yourself anymore. You've committed to going public. We'll let you know. Thank you.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bullshit.
Thank you.
Oh, cool shit.
No, I said thank you, Leslie, for bringing you here.
Oh,
Thank you.
cool shit. Uh-huh.
Sounds just like bullshit. But it's the opposite.
So I know Peter wants to leave,
Flashback.
and we may have another 5 or 10 minutes just to review. I would love to hear from you what it was like,
Okay.
other than getting
Cool
hot.
shit.
Arena's got to take her home in the next 5, just to,
5 minutes. Okay.
yeah.
Yes, we probably.
Oh.
And
So there's just a number of people who.
Is anybody
That is
going
a-
south on 580? No,
I'm heading into San Francisco.
nobody's going south on south. Okay.
So feel free to.
Okay. See you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Adios.
See you later.
See ya.
My feedback is
More tomorrow.
yay, and thank you.
Awesome. So it was a little trial by fire.
So you haven't done that before?
Oh, yeah, I have,
You have.
but not under time pressure.
Oh, yeah, like, yeah,
With
20
someone,
minutes.
we've never done that before, and I'm being torn between furthering the action and giving you enough space to,
Yeah.
match my energy, because when we're co-leading, that's kind of the invitation to
Yeah.
match.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
It was. I liked it though. I appreciated it. And yes, I mean, it went the way it needed to, with management time and concerns. So I was good with that.
So we had a couple of moments where I was just a moment quicker than you were. In terms of like, oh yeah, that too.
It was fun, yes.
Uh-huh.
I just, it's probably natural for me to defer a little bit. Obviously, you have a lot more weight than I do. And also a little bit culturally.
And gender. I mean, there's a lot of
Yes.
stuff going on.
Yes, well, I include that with some of the cultural stuff.
Yes. Fair.
But I thought it went pretty well. I really appreciated the invitation.
5 stars for accepting
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
invitation.
And
Yeah,
quickly.
that's-
Like,
that's-
I'm on that. I want to do that.
That's gonna bump you up on
Oh,
I knew that actually. I signed up for it. He's always told us I'm going to show up.
Why would you ever want to do this though? Like, I don't get the benefit.
Oh, co-facility?
Yeah, I'm still.
Oh my God, once you get into it, you don't want to do it any other way.
Really?
It's a little of a personality thing. Some people can't make it work, but for people who do, yes.
And I don't know that it's for constellations. I do it with trainings, I do it with presentations.
Well, definitely training.
Coaching.
Yeah.
So my nervous system will respond, will have different kind of thresholds for action in her nervous system. And when we can combine, we literally show up in the combo strength. So there will be things when we get a little more, when there's truly more clarity and peering, there are things that will arise for her before I notice, and she will be on it already.
You get the benefit of both resources, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. And if we can truly rely on each other, I'll just step back. If there's a movement for her, I don't know where she's going. I can just, step back a bit and then watch. And then she'll get stuck. And I'll come in and say, like, oh, try this. And being able to switch it that way.
Like a divine ballet.
Although that does imply sort of a hierarchy, because you're like, I'll let you go forward, and then when you're in trouble, I'll step in.
Or
Oh,
when
no,
I get in
I
trouble.
felt that it was.
Okay.
Not that I mean forward, but that location.
Because I would think,
Yeah,
a
I don't know.
possibility would be that, if you're truly co-facilitating, you're both coming in as equals, somebody might have a hit to go a direction right when you wanted to go a different direction, and you're just
Yeah.
like, taking my
What am I
fire.
doing?
Yeah. Yes. And so
But we set it up.
we set it up
Yes,
that way. So we're sourcing it from a shared
To a
place.
mod place.
Uh-huh.
And if like I co-facilitated with Carl Buchheit and stuff, yeah. And if he went down a direction that I didn't understand yet, I was stepping back. And
it's not ego driven.
and then or I went down a direction and then suddenly I get stuck. And I just instinctively stepped back a little bit, and then he came swooping in, and there was a sentence, and then the movement was back.
And we were saying today, the added benefit to the systemics of the process is if you two are in trust and in safety with each other, it feeds everybody else in the room and builds the field of trust and safety. So if you can pull it off, it has this interesting added benefit. Like, oh, we're all cool because they're cool together.
Yeah, that's true.
Now I can relax.
I didn't
Yeah.
think about it, but yeah.
And the more profound that is, I mean, I've seen couples, it's the only way they do it. And you can just feel like, oh, they're fine together.
All is well.
We're good.
God forbid you should have a conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a constellation.
No, you can't. Then it's a conversation. I don't like that. Where would you go?
This is awesome.
I do this, I do that.
But you wouldn't do that during the constellation.
Sure.
It's there, you have to.
Oh, there's no other way.
Yeah.
But
I
then it
don't
becomes
know.
about you guys as
I
the
don't
leaders.
know. Oh, but Sue, it's about the field.
Hmm.
So it's not personal. If it starts to be personal, then we're screwed.
Yeah.
You always do it that way, God damn it. There you go again. Just like my ex-husband. God damn it. I hate when you do this.
But there are definitely moments when it's conflict resolution in the moment. And boy, they're like, you gotta be present.
And again, the group is not troubled by conflict per se. It's whether you guys can be okay in it.
Yes.
And this is the presumption that conflict will make things unsafe. It actually isn't. It's how we handle the conflict.
Yes.
The conflict arises anyway.
Everyone knows about the conflict. So if we're not dealing with it, it actually
That's the problem.
decreases
It's less
safety.
safe.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
I,
she's stomping on him, but he's not acknowledging it. That's more problematic.
like 3 days ago, I was in a co-lead dance in the training, and the setup, and I was like, the way David set it up did not work for me at all. And I was like, I had this flash of anger. I was like, we're losing this and that aspect of it, and this doesn't work for me. He sort of looked at me, and I was like, okay. And then we flipped it around. And then
Meaning that the understanding's
yielded.
happened in looks.
he yielded, he checked in with himself. He said like, okay, not that important to me. I get his point. And then just like rearranged the exercise a bit. And we went right on, and there was no stickiness, there was no holding a grudge, and everybody knew, and there was
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
See you in the morning. 9:45 or so.
So nobody can give me a ride, right?
When you say south on 580, I don't know if you're going to South Oakland or whether you're going to Fremont.
Oh, see, I didn't figure out. I need to go to
It is a
Park Avenue and 13th, but I just got a text that I'm supposed to go to some other place a few blocks away now, and so it's a little more complicated.
I can take you if you don't need to go immediately.
Yes, okay.
All
right.
But when you say south on 580, I think no one responded because no one knows.
Where that
Like, are
is.
you going to San Jose?
I also,
Los Gatos?
I have someone out of town that's on deck
13th
here.
and Bayview.
So yeah, I can tell you that's not a big deal. I can drive you down there.
3633 Ardley is another thing. I don't know where that is. Instead, I'm going to.
I leave the navigation in your fine hands.
Okay, all right.